Good day. Welcome to the Africans in America podcast. With me, as always, is Wuruche, Uzoka.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, Wuruche, today I want to discuss something that even though it's counterintuitive, we have a situation where a lot of immigrants are being, for lack of a better word, shipped out of the country. But we also have a situation where some people are coming into America through the legal means. They are asylum seekers. They come from war-torn countries. They've had conflict where they are coming from. They've had a lot of crisis in personal and national that make them come to America and seek asylum. So we want to talk about the African immigrants that pass through the asylum pathway. Recently, the figures from the Immigration Institute, the American Immigration Institute, found out that there's a lot much more Africans coming through the southern border now than ever before. Before in 2020, it was just 12,000 people, but recently it became 58,000 people. A lot of Africans are now coming through the southern border. But even before the southern border, most times when Africans come here and they overstay, they tend to apply for asylum. That process is a very long one, but at least that process gives you a right to start to work, and you start to work in America. As at last time, the figures posted out was that there were 58,000 Africans who passed through the southern border to come and seek asylum in America. Now, you have a personal story regarding the asylum process. It's a long one, it's a tedious one, it's one where you need to plead and find your way and go through a very rigorous judicial process before you get to see the final outcome of it. Can you run us through that process?
Yeah, sure. So the asylum process, it starts with, first of all, you have to come into the country legally. So when I say legally, like most asylees, so it's a two-part thing with the immigration. So you have the refugees who are granted their status outside of America. Then you have the asylees whose status are granted in America. And for most of the asylees, it's usually people who, like we spoke about the other day, they come in with their visas, and then in some cases their visas run out, right? But then with the way the asylum was established, when I went through that process, from the date of entry until a year later, you have an entire year to file your asylum paperwork. So, when you come into the country and you're given 6 months to stay, that's fine
Yeah.
if you exceed the 6 months, as long as you file your paperwork within a year. And so that process is going to take you through, the application process. And then from there, you go to the asylum level, officer's level, and then you do the interview. If you're granted your status, then okay, that's awesome. Then you go apply for your paperwork, etc. However, in my case, I wasn't granted my status then. I had to I was immediately put in deportation proceedings,
Whoa.
but then my lawyers appealed, and we it got granted at the immigration judge level. These things take months and months. Okay. And so in my case, it pretty much took from let's say it took about less than a year for this entire process. I want to think it was less than a year. It was almost 2 years for the entire process. And when you're granted the asylum, you have 5 years before you can you have a whole year to be an asylee. And then from that one year, you have, I think, 4 years after that to become resident, I believe. No, to become American. You become resident the next year after you've been an asylee for a year. You can apply for your residency the very next year, which you're granted almost immediately. I was granted my residency in 3 weeks, right? And then from that point on, you count to the total of 5 years. That's when you become American. And so the process, depending on where you're from, what your issue is, or what the issue was at your home country, it can change the way your status is upheld or whatever it is. And so that's just the basic process for the asylum. The refugee, on the other hand, most of the refugees live in refugee camps in different countries. They've moved from their home countries to a different location. And
Wait,
from
wait,
that
wait, wait,
location,
wait. Before you continue, I didn't even know there was a difference between asylum seekers and refugees. What's the difference here?
The difference is that the refugees apply outside of America, right? In their
Oh,
home country or in the second location, while the asylees apply in America. So the
oh,
asylees are already here, right? And then it's kind of what ends up happening is, yes, they give you your papers, but it's almost like an adjustment of status type of thing because you're
mhm.
already here. But with the refugees, you have to be in your home country or whichever location you move to. And then, from that, where you processed your application from. And that's why when they come in, they don't have to go through the process of waiting a whole year to get their status granted, right? They just I think their 5 years kicks in from once they come in because they've already been granted. With the asylee, your kicks in a year after you've been an asylee in America. That's not that your status, because your status already kicked in, but then your pathway to being a citizen, of your pathway to being a green card holder and then a citizen, it kicks in a year after. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And it's mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this process, even though it seems very straightforward, is very expensive. It needs you to get an immigration lawyer, some form of lawyer, and all. What are the who are the people out there that do this filing for asylum
Asylees.
seekers, either pro bono or as a paid thing? Because that is one of the major problems when people file for asylum. They need to pay lawyers.
Yes.
There's a legal process, and I don't know if there's a pathway where you can self petition for that also. I don't know if there is, but so how do people pay for it? How do they get
Yeah,
that process, that filing
that's it.
process? But
Mhm. So my personal experience, I had to call a bunch of law offices, quite a number of them. I just took my yellow book and I started to call. And then it was during that process that I spoke to a lady who was kind enough to tell me that Yale Law School had a program at the time. I want to still think they still do have that program now, but I'm not 100%. And so that they had a pro bono program. But usually when you reach out to the law offices, some lawyers are able to help you pro bono, while some might charge you a fee after the fact. It all depends. But I would advise for people to go to more like colleges that have law schools. They usually have student lawyers who most likely will have courses that they're taking where they can apply this experience to their the application process and the supporting of asylees or refugees or people who need even care of any like legal representation of any kind. Most times they would have that. Not all schools have that. Not all schools that have law schools even have that. Some schools are actually, are able to do that. And so the advice would be reach out to the schools, to different schools in your area, maybe in the outer environs of your area, and then find out which schools are able to, which law offices or schools are able to already have a pro bono program going and are able to assist you. And yeah, that's how it works. You just reach out. You just don't know where your luck is going to come from. Just reach out, do the part, but also read up about asylum cases. The time I read up a ton of asylum cases, I read up a ton of backlogged cases that had been pending. There was a period in America where it took like 10 to 15 years for your asylum to be granted. It was that long, but they sped up the process after a while and worked on all the backlogs. Can you hear that sound? Is it a bother?
yeah, I can. No, 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 we are good. Go on.
Okay. So yeah, that's the process. Yes. So yeah.
Okay. Now the asylum process is one of the main things that come out of it is that you get a work authorization, and you have to now start to find a job if you've not already started working somehow. What are the common jobs African immigrants tend to go to? I noticed that there's a large preponderance of people to go towards caregiving. you know. Why is this so?
So first of all, let me address the work authorization. The work authorization is not automatic. It comes after 150 days. You don't want your
Okay.
case to last that long. Your hope is that your case isn't for you to even need your work authorization, that means it's not being granted and you need to appeal because we're talking how many days? 150 days is that not 6 months? That is about
Yeah.
5 months, 6 months, right? So your hope is that you've jumped past that scale. But if indeed you do get the work authorization while the appeal is going on, yeah, most of them do care jobs because it doesn't require anything other than maybe getting a certification from the Red Cross, I believe. You get one of those
Yeah.
CNA certifications or
Sometimes they
something,
even need
or
the certification.
sometimes you don't even need that. And so it's an easy pathway. You just go in there, you start to earn income. Another thing they do too is that so I think the question was about like why do they lean towards the healthcare industry,
Yeah, the
correct?
healthcare, caregiving
Because
especially.
it's
Because that's
care caregiving, yeah, again, it's easy, it's an easy pathway. You just
it's a
I
no
mean,
hanging fruit.
yes, and you've cared for people. Your experience is like something you've done in the past. If it's you've cared for your grandmother, cared for your mother, cared for yourself, cared for your
Yeah.
kids, it's something that you kind of know how to do. And then with regards to like the healthcare industry itself, most people find that it grants job security. And so, like, you find them either doing LPN or doing nursing because it's just automatic job security, right? And that's when you've gotten your papers and you're more settled. Then you attend college and you do that. And you don't have to worry about your income for the rest of your stay. And it's good income that they get paid. Then the ones who want to go further on and do their get their masters and PhD and all of that, then it just becomes, it's guaranteed amazing income. If it's something that you were already leaning towards just before you got here, even better. But if it's something that you found yourself doing just because of the location, as the point is you'll be able to break ground. So that's
Yeah.
why the healthcare industry is the most amazing job. There's always going to be the need for
Yeah.
healthcare workers forever.
It's interesting to see when immigrants come to America, African immigrants, they may have come as bankers, as lawyers,
Mhm.
as doctors, or civil servants, senior civil servants, and then you see them ending up as nurses.
Yes, yes. The nursing
Some because
industry is so
the
good.
process to go into medicine is to become doctor is so tedious and so onerous in America that the easy pathway is to become a nurse or to become, I think for the caregivers, they become CNAs or something like that. I
Mhm.
guess that's after you have moved from asylum seeker to work authorization and you're in the process of getting
Yes, yes.
into
It's fulfilling too. From the ladies that I know a ton of ladies who went from LPN to nursing to nurse practitioners and all that. It's so fulfilling for
wow.
them.
It's like achieving milestones, right?
Yes,
You
absolutely.
achieve this one, you say, okay, that's the next one, and then you start
Yes, yes. It's
pushing towards it.
extremely, extremely fulfilling. So again, it's job security. There's no other reference to it. It's a risk for you to come here and start out being a creative and hope to break ground. Like it's like okay. So getting a
Yeah,
nurse a job in the healthcare could guarantee that at least while you do all that creativity of a thing and innovation, you have a roof over your head. You know what I mean? You're
yeah.
able to feed yourself and pay your bills. Yeah.
Let me on a personal level tell a story of how I veered off the beaten path and decided to go into manufacturing. And
Mhm.
this is somebody who was a journalist in Nigeria, who was I dare say, managerial level person in Nigeria, and then you come into the factory floor, and then
Mhm.
you don't know anything. In fact, the first time I went to Home Depot, I didn't know 99% of all the things in Home Depot and Lowe's. Then, then, then you see machines, you see CNC machines, and you see all these huge machines going automated machines. And where do you even start? There
Where do you
was
start?
Yeah, one common refrain while I was in the manufacturing was hello, Mr. Mungo, we gotta let you go because you just didn't have the skill set for we
Oh,
gotta let you
that's
go. We gotta
wild.
let you go. And when you're paying bills in America, you don't like that word. You don't want
Of
to
course
be
not. You
disrupted.
don't. Yes. I started at the bank, at working at the bank. So remember again, I had my two children with me and they were really small. Like we went through the process, the entire process of my applying for my paperwork. My son was barely 3 and he had to go to preschool because I wasn't going to let him sit at home and just, it was going to be a lot. My daughter was 2, he was 3. So I would walk him to the preschool very close to the house, me and my daughter. We would come home. And then my daughter the very next year got to 3 and she started. That was the entire process. That was the entire period when I was going to the law school, to the courthouse, to the meetings, to the this, to the that. So most times, because my son was in school, I would always show up with my daughter. And then they would give her toys and she'd be playing. There were multiple times that little girl had to go to court with me, and she would sit there. The lawyers would be giving her doodle pads while I'm talking to the judge. It was just that dramatic. And then fast forward, she started school, she started preschool, and then, they bought. So the best job for me at the time was being in a bank because in the bank, you can even, and then I had started taking classes as well. So the bank gives you like, what's it, tuition reimbursement. They give you childcare. So those
Wow.
little things added up and made a difference for me while I was going through the process. And then, whatever little income they gave me as a teller, because I was a teller at the time, whatever tiny income paid my bills, paid my rent. And it was just, and that's it. And then you just keep going. Every day presented a new thing. But the one thing that was important to do or to not do was to give up. You just keep going. You have to keep
Yeah,
going. And that's what keeps, and then another thing that keeps you going is not imagination, but the hope that you're one step closer to getting your green card. And then you get your green card. The next milestone is your how many years away from getting your citizenship. And so you keep
citizenship.
going. And then while you're doing that, you're in school and you're hoping to graduate. And so the kids are growing, getting into programs, dance, music, piano, and they're starting to do games in school. So guess what? If your life is filled up with so many activities that it's like you don't even worry about anything else. You know what I mean? Your life just happens, and then
Yeah.
and then that's it. Yeah. Hmm.
I hear a lot of people who when they look back, because they've become nurses, they've bought homes, they've become accomplished in
Yeah.
even the ones who took the not too familiar path towards management and somehow found their way into consultancies and our very familiar path through IT. We seem to have a lot of brainy people in that space. In
Yes.
Austin here
Yes. IT is so
particularly, we
good.
have a lot of people in the IT space working in Dell,
Yes.
working in Oracle, working in Google. But what they want, when you see them now, you will not know how they started. And they look back and they said, oh boy, you won't know how we started. And
Yes.
for
Indeed.
you, yours was through the asylum pathway. There are so many other pathways some other people
Yes. Yes.
go through, the
Hmm.
asylum pathway, and that's what we're discussing here now.
Hmm.
It would be nice for some of our viewers to give us comments on how they also um,
That's
um,
at the
went
process.
through their own process, what process they went through, and how they found their own feet in America. Because it's when you jackpot and for the first few years you have not sorted yourself out. When you hear stuff like Donald Trump is coming around, it gives ulcer. It gives
It
ulcer.
does.
It gives
Yes. It
and
causes
but their pathways
anxiety.
it gives
Hmm.
anxiety. There are pathways to legalizing and to regularizing one's stay in
Hmm.
America, and
Yes. Yes.
it's a good thing you shed light on it. What would you tell people who are also in this asylum pathway? Because it's almost like a loop. Sometimes they are rejected, and then they are rejected again, and then
Mhm.
they are. And you know that word when they are rejected, they are now put in deportation proceedings. That's a
Yes. Yes.
real serious
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
So what would
Yes.
you tell them?
Just keep the faith. Keep the faith. Like just wake up every day and do what you absolutely have to do. If it's something that's meant for you to do, you're going to see it. Like for me, the day my asylum was granted, that same day, my lawyers called me in the morning to say your asylum has been granted. The thing is, I need to go a little back. So sometime in October was when the asylum officer denied my case, right? So between October and December, there was that DV lottery of a thing going on, the visa
They've
lotteries.
stopped
And so
Nigerians from using that pathway.
they
No
have in
Nigerian has
recent
used
years,
that pathway.
yes, yes, because they gave a lot of Nigerians qualified over the years. But for me, I now put in for the visa lottery. On the very last day, my lawyers again reached out to me, that resource, and said, you do qualify to apply for the visa lottery. So I applied for the visa lottery. You won't even believe it. The day I got the letter saying I should apply, I gave up hope for my asylum. I was like, are they sending me this just because they don't think my asylum is going to work? I was so heartbroken. But it wasn't that. It was just they were giving you more options. And so I applied, and then the same day they called me to say that my visa had been approved at the immigration judge level. Was that same evening I got a big envelope saying I had won the visa lottery. So on 2 days I got one. I got my
Your own is double. Your own is double double.
double.
In
And that's
Nigeria,
an
we have a
indication.
phrase for it. We call it one blow, seven apple. So
That was And that's an indication for me, that's an indication that it's what you're meant to do is where you're meant to be. These are when I talk about signs from above, these are the signs I refer to, that God is with you. Sometimes as human beings and as we doubt, we lack faith, we look at the presentation of what's going on in the physical without realizing that some of these things come to strengthen you, right? They come to strengthen your resolve. They come to also strengthen your understanding of why you're here and who put you here. And so in my case, I looked at it like God saying, look at this silly girl. You thought I was just going to abandon you. I need to prove to you that I'm with you. And so he gave me two.
yeah.
So eventually I had to abandon the DV lottery. And then I did the asylum, because that's true to my story. Not to say DV lottery is not true to my story, but the asylum is what I had spent a long time trying to work on. Right. I wasn't just
Yeah.
not going to go that path. Yeah.
So,
So
so for
end of
those
the
people
story.
who are still in that process of trying to get regularized in America with all the
Mhm.
big storm of Donald Trump's